Hey everybody, I just wanted to pop on and make a quick video where I show you a little bit about Matlab and go through some of these functions that are in your handout that I know you may be so confused about right now. So the first thing I've done here is I've just opened Matlab. I have an older version of Matlab running on my Mac, so when you open your version, if you do remote access into the Engineering Design Center, it may look a little bit different. But a few things I just want to point out. This main spot here is your command window. This is like a giant calculator, and so we'll use it at first and to test some of our functions, but we're mostly going to be running scripts. So you may, when you open your Matlab, have another window pop up here. This is the script editor. We'll get to that in a day or two. So for now, I'm going to close it just to increase the command window. You'll also see a current folder directory. So these are all the files living in the directory that Matlab's currently looking at. And then down here is the workspace, and you'll see that populate here in a few minutes. So you can just use this space as a giant calculator. So I can do 3 plus 3 and hit enter, and you'll see that I get a variable named answer, ANS, that's the default variable, equal to 6. You can also see down here it pops up in our workspace where I now have the name, ANS, and the value. So this is just going to keep track of all the variables you currently have defined. One thing to note is if I do a calculation, and let's say I want to name this 6, so I say 6 is equal to 3 plus 3. If I put a semicolon here and then hit enter, the calculation is still going to work. You can tell down here from the workspace, but it doesn't pop the answer back out in the command window. And so that semicolon just suppresses the information, and that can come in really handy. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about creating MATLAB vectors and matrices using these methods that were given in the handout. I'm going to return back to that muffin example I did in the previous video. So let's say I wanted to name my muffin row, and I believe it had, I forget. So I'm just going to make something up. 3, and then 6, and then 10, and then 12 chocolate chips in my row, right? I can use, this is the direct method, where I use square brackets at the beginning and the end, and then spaces in between each value, and I'll get that Laura. You can do the same thing instead with commas instead of spaces. But again, just the open bracket and close bracket and spaces or commas. These are row vectors. If you would prefer it to be, I'm going to add one more just for Claire. So let's go 4, 9, 10, and 12. She gets a lot of chocolate chips. That one I did the semicolon. And there you go. So now if I type in here Laura, it's going to pop out what's saved as Laura or Ellie or Claire. If you wanted to do a column thing going up and down instead of across, let's say I wanted to, my husband's a rebel, so he wants it to be the other direction. I have to type semicolons in between each to make it go up and down. Okay, so a semicolon is like telling it to go to the next line. This is different than a semicolon, which suppresses. Okay, so another thing you can do is a colon operator. And a colon operator you can do, let's say I wanted to count from 1 to 5. So if I say test 1 is equal 1 colon 5, that's going to go in increments of 1, starting at 1, ending in 5. And so if I did test 2 and I wanted the odd values, I could do 1 colon 2 colon 5, and it's going to be 1, 3, 5. Okay? If I wanted to make this instead into a column vector, I can put a apostrophe, and that's going to switch it down into, mess that up, let's try that again. Let's put the square brackets on it here. That's going to transpose the vector and turn it into a column vector. All right, okay, some more about the colon operator. You can have a negative inside. So if I go 5 colon negative 2 colon 1, that's going to count down from 5, subtract 2, and then go to 3, and then subtract 2 and go to 1. Okay, so those are the main methods that I use to create vectors in Matlab. Some other Matlab functions that create matrices. Another one similar to the colon operator is called Linspace. This linearly spaces numbers. So if I did test 4 equals Linspace, and this time I give it the bottom, and so 0, and then I give it the upper bound, let's say I want 10, and then I tell it how many elements I want in there. So I want it to have 100. It's not going to increment by 100. It's going to have 100 total elements. So I've suppressed it, but you can still see it's popped up here, and it says test 4 is 1 by 100. I can write this out, but you'll see it's just sort of a wall of numbers, so you can get a good idea now for why we do the semicolons. You can do a similar thing with log space. It's going to do a log spacing of them instead of a linear space, but it's the same thing. You have log space. Let's do 1, 100, and let's do 10. 1, 10, 100. And this is going to look a little different because it's a log space. If you wanted to make a matrix or a, let's call this test 0, or a vector that's all full of zeros, you can use the function zeros. Let's say I wanted it to be 2 by 2. That's just going to give you 4 zeros. That has 2 rows, 2 columns, all zeros. All right. Hopefully this was a little bit helpful. I'm going to do something here where I will make another document where I post for you all of the, basically a screenshot of my command window so you can try this yourself in Matlab. All right, see you soon.